not at this point, but I'm
No.
just using my tablet as well.
Not recording. Oh no, it's all good. It's recording.
It's all recording now. Great. And we'll welcome Gay and Marianne and all our students who are probably going to watch this multiple times. This is your little recording for your second assignment of paper 2, the health promotion strategy assignment. So what we're kind of thinking to do is just to unpick a little bit about the assignment, assessment tasks and the purpose of assignment, and talk a little bit around health promotion in general. You guys should have your descriptor, so that's got a little bit about the summary about the assignment, and you'll also have the supplementary sheet. So we're going to work a little bit off the supplementary sheet as well. So I have those to refer to when you're listening to the video as well. Yeah, so gosh, health promotion, where do we start, guys? Purpose of the assignment. What is the purpose of health promotion? I suppose a definition would be a good start.
Jess is looking for an answer.
No, I'm just, the students could say, oh, look it up. I'm not really keen on definitions. Yeah. So like your previous one, identify any gaps you've got about your own learning and, link into LSS early. If you know your strengths and your weaknesses around assignments, try and plan for this one as well. Offhand, I can't remember when it's due, but I think you've got probably about 4 weeks until it's due. The assignment purpose is, well, it says it's going to enable you to apply evidence and theory. And so the evidence is going to be around what will work for health promotion for your health topic. Now, you're going to remember that this linked back to your previous assignment, but this really unpicks a lot more about what you're going to do to reduce the inequity for your identified population. Yeah, anybody got any ideas about health promotion?
Well, you've got a health issue, obviously, you've identified that already, and then you've analysed that health issue in terms of Child Tīmariki service, and you identified some gaps, hopefully. So in those gaps, you're thinking about, okay, well, this service isn't working. I like to make it really simple for my brain anyway. This service isn't working. What can I do? So what strategy can I think of, and what promotional activities can I incorporate to change the outcomes for this particular population? And we are thinking about New Zealand and the population that we're serving. It's an opportunity to develop something new, but also something that has worked in the past and maybe a different area that you could perhaps transport from one place to another, from one community to another, from one country to another. So we've got loads of examples where health promotion has worked, but you've got to bear in mind what your community looks like, and is it likely that this kind of community is going to respond to your strategy that you've dreamed up?
That's right. And what kinds of populations do you think could be identified? So, for example, if you chose your health issue was around reducing disparity for SUDI, what kind of population might a nurse have identified in her community that is suffering disparity for SUDI outcome?
I suppose if you look at the literature that would have popped up when you identified the health issue for SUDI, Māori and Pacific particularly are most at risk of SUDI in our communities. So that's your starting point. And there's quite a bit in the literature around SUDI. So that's, and particularly New Zealand literature. So that's a good place to start. And there's a few strategies within the New Zealand literature that you may consider needs a little bit more attention in 2022. But also have a look at what's happening across the rest of the world. So Australia, obviously, takes things slightly differently. The UK again uses SIDS rather than SUDI, and the other place I tend to look, particularly looking for Indigenous populations, is have a look at the Canadian literature around SUDI or SIDS.
Yeah. Yeah, so important, because this is, of course, is an evidence-based assignment. So what is the evidence telling you generally about your population? And for SUDI, it clearly is about often Indigenous populations. And of course you could, but you might find in your caseload that actually you buck the trend for something. So again, if you've managed to get some caseload data and reflected in that in your previous assignment, then you may find that actually your population is going to be not one that is normally recognised, but if you have data that shows that disparity, then that may be what you will design your health promotion strategy for. Yeah, what are the kind of populations?
Well, you might want to draw it down a little bit and perhaps look at populations inside of populations. So without getting too small, it might be Māori mothers who are solo mothers. It might be Pacifica whānau and extended whānau situations. You might just want to drill down according to your caseload, according to what you see in your own community, and as Jess said, what your data showed in the last kind of analysis that you did.
Yeah.
Being mindful all the time of the literature that you need to support that, but you know, if you're working with Pacifica and Māori, as Marianne said, you'll be able to find quite a lot.
For sure. Yeah. So in this part one of the assessment task, the first part of the assessment task, actually I'll just backtrack for 20 seconds. So just around the purpose of the assignment. So the evidence that you're applying will be often a little bit around either the Ottawa Charter or the health strategy that you've looked at for the gap, but it'll also be evidence around your population and your health issue. So you're going to be looking at quite a few lots of literature, and of course around nursing literature as well. So anyway, part one, guys, moving on to that one there. So what does the bicultural context of primary healthcare service delivery in Aotearoa New Zealand mean? Should we just talk about that for 5 minutes? Because it's a bit of a mouthful and it's so important that sometimes you can stumble about how you want to think and write about that.
Well, I kick it off, Marianne. So bicultural context, obviously we're looking at Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and so we have the home people, the people of the land, so the Māori and other. And in the true sense of biculturalism, it is about the European heritage people, so the people that provided that positioning back in the early 1800s, where they were the dominant culture. So bicultural to me means Māori and those of European descent. And in the context of primary health care, we're looking at the data that's provided for both of those in comparison in your analysis.
Mm-hmm. So it does take you back to your, looking at some of your caseload, but also what does that look like in practice, particularly around your topic. So if you pick a topic, SUDI's a good one, obviously whether there's quite definite disparity between European or other, depending what's described in the literature, and Māori and or Pacific. So what is the gap, and what is your, you think about what is your gap and what might your strategy do or activity to reduce that gap. Or if you're looking at oral health, for example, what does that look like in your location, and what is the risk? What does the literature say?
Yeah, and of course, underpinning this, we have, I've definitely made the assumption that we're all going to be thinking about equity or inequity, because that's why it's important. And of course, that's what the Ottawa Charter and the New Zealand Health Strategy are both trying to address. They're trying to address that inequity. So again, that takes you back to the fact that your identified population and how you've identified that inequity are and important for understanding this assignment and the flow of the assignment. Yeah, and so anytime you can define anything like, you know, any important keywords, make sure you look for those keywords in the assignment task. And if you're not sure about them, you know, Google them, look them up, and perhaps provide a definition, because if you can define them in your assignment, you're much more likely to stay on task, on topic. I'm just thinking of that. So part 1, what do you guys reckon are some of the key words? Number 1, discuss what health promotion activities you would implement to address this gap. I'm adding the gap bit because it's assumed, but it's about a gap. Yeah.
So do you mean using the health issue just prior to that, or do you mean in that sentence that you've just used?
Yeah, well, just on that part, both of them actually. What are the important things you need to understand? We've just done one, the bicultural context, so understanding that.
So absolutely key, the bicultural context. Primary healthcare is another highlight. The health issue, obviously, that you identified.
Yeah.
So three main things there: health issue, bicultural context, and primary healthcare in New Zealand. I think that's just a, you know, understood.
Understanding that that's what you're going to be delving for. And so the first one, when it says discuss what health promotion activities you would implement to address this, what's the key word? I'm thinking of you here, Marianne. In fact, I think you might have even provided very usefully, maybe not on this one. Oh, you have. You provided a definition of that key term.
Health promotion on the next page.
Discuss.
Provide a definition of health promotion.
Oh, yeah, and also that, yeah.
But also activity.
Sheet.
And what you would implement. So that's something that you would do as a wild child tamariki nurse in your community.
Exactly.
So something that you think is doable from your practice context.
Yeah, yeah. Because the you means you and your well child role. So it's not something you refer, it's something that potentially you could do. We just had Katrina briefly popping in there, guys. You might have noticed it's because she's got to upload this to Turnitin. Yeah, so it is. It's about you and what does discuss mean? So again, in the writing, they've got to do some discussing, and you've provided a very useful definition at the end of the supplementary sheet.
I have.
Yeah, present an organised argument giving both sides of a question. Thank you. Yeah.
Forget what you do some days, don't you?
That's what you need to structure your writing around. You're going to be saying, well, this says this, and this says this, and on the other hand, it's giving that little bit of it's giving the kind of a balanced view, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting way to write when you have an author that says this and an author that says that, and they might not be agreeing, but you state your position inside of that and say where you're following on. But however, Smith and Brown says that, Green and White says this.
Yeah, that's true.
Or it might be that you're actually in the quandary about what you want to do. So you might want to, I think oral health is probably a nice topic of mine. Consider fluoride, for example. So your strategy, your activity might be to increase some awareness around fluoride use, whatever that looks like. And you've got literature that will say it's great from a public health perspective. It's a really good tool to use, but you've got some literature sitting in the back that says, oh, it can cause this and it can cause that, and it's expensive and a whole range of things is to back it up. So you might need to navigate that and be quite clear why you think it's important, but be cognizant of the noise, which is another way of putting around the other part of the discussion that you may need to address, saying actually, but for some people this is a problem and this may disrupt going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's really good to have a standpoint before you start, and as you're looking at your literature, you know, you make that stronger, or you change sides, but don't sit on the fence. It's better to have an argument that you're supporting rather than this or that.
Yeah, good points. And of course, within the literature, you're going to keeping in your mind about your identified population. So it may be that there might be quite a good body of literature around health promoting activities for oral health. And in fact, I'm just remembering, like 2009, there's actually a strategy somewhere online, a New Zealand health strategy, just to identify specifically for oral health. So if anybody's doing oral health, have a Google at that. But again, it might be that there's this lovely body of evidence, but not for your population. So that will come into your discussion as well. And maybe you might have some reflection on that about the particular characteristics that will influence what health strategy you use for your population.
And you may need to go a little bit further if you've just on that one about your population. If it's not enough written in New Zealand, you may need to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
So maybe Australia, Britain, Canada, and just specify the population, and you may be able to look at what they've done in those other communities or places and extrapolate it across to New Zealand by saying, actually, they've done this in Canada, this might work here because, or actually it may not work here because, what can you do to make it work in New Zealand, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And because we're thinking about indigeneity, I wanted to use that word. We could take it across from other places. If it's worked with an Aboriginal population somewhere, it may work here, but it may not also. And I'm thinking of, where you would deliver information via a group session, and it might be on a marae, or it might be in a church for Pacifica, thinking about what your strategy looks like in terms of what your population is. But why it is important is the next part of that brief outline, and why it's important. So you would need to identify that.
So can you just elaborate on that, Gay?
Well, I think if you're thinking about looking at your own data or national data, and you are thinking about SUDI, obviously it's important that we address Pacifica and Māori populations because babies are dying. I mean, that's probably the clearest example of why it's important, because we haven't made the difference that we thought we might make with the strategies that we implemented back in the 90s with Face Up, and then with Wahakura and Pepe Pods. We still haven't reduced that gap between Māori and other, or Pacifica and other. We've reduced the number of deaths, but we haven't reduced the gap. So it's important.
Disparity again, isn't it?
Yes.
It was important, but it is important because they're suffering from disparity still. Yeah. Right. So I know that, and we've had a little assignment discussions, and people get muddled up a little bit around, and we've just had this discussion amongst us three as well, guys. So you are not alone here. Health promotion strategy versus health promotion activities. So the strategy is kind of the overarching what you're trying to, the goal of what you're trying to do. So you've got a strategy to, for example, increase health literacy around oral health for a particular population, or your health strategy will be to provide a resource, a community resource to support for your population. And the activities are what you do to make that strategy, make that goal that you've identified. Do you guys want to add anything to that? Because I feel that we can't really unpick that too much, really. We'll give some examples of it, maybe.
So I mean, your activities could be an activity as opposed to plural, but sometimes there may be some subplots within your activity, if that's a good word to use. And yeah, how big is an activity? Your world is your oyster, really.
You might have a strategy to reduce smoking in the household, for instance, and inside of that, your promotional activities might look like, I don't know, creating something that you could, a fridge magnet or something that you could give out to your whānau that they could remind themselves about not smoking in the house or in the car. That's a very simple one, but your overall strategy will be one thing, and then inside of that, you could be doing lots of things. You could develop a resource in te reo. You could have focus groups or sessions at church groups after service. You know, you could be doing a whole lot of work inside of the reduction of smoking at home.
Yeah, that's right, and keep on linking your actions back to the evidence for your population, as well as within your wider health topic. I think that's quite important. Cool. Okay, so the second part of assessment task 1 is evaluate the effectiveness of this strategy. So should we look at that using an example? So for example, Go, should we use your one around that you've designed you've seen that you want to increase health literacy around supporting smoke-free homes for your Māori whānau. So how would you evaluate that?
When I look at my caseload and perhaps pull out, you know, you might want to do a simple poll, or what's the word? I'm trying to find the word. Marianne, help me out.
Questionnaire, online questionnaire.
Or you just pull out some EPHRs and look at what's going on at the moment. So you might look at 20 different random EPHRs of clients and see how many are smoking in your area. And the reason why you've chosen that is because it's high in your area, obviously. And the gap is you might have identified that this is in relationship to Māori whānau. And so then you can also do a simple questionnaire as you go. You know, might you set yourself up for the next week or so, and just everybody that you are in contact with, you ask them, you know, are you smoke free or not? And then you might do that for 3 months later at the next, or 2 months later at the next call visit, and just see if it's made any difference. Don't know if that gap is long enough, but you know, you might want to do it over 6 months. Whatever your strategy is, you would kind of know to expect whether it's going to take a long time or a short time.
Yeah, and there might be some evidence around how long it takes from that you've already read, so maybe you could reflect that in your discussion as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you do something like a face-to-face presentation or a group session on something, on a topic, you could have already lined up some sort of valuation at the end of it, like we do for professional development activities, for example. What did you want to achieve, and what did you consider important to ask the client group at the end of the strategy or activity that you've had? Do you think they'll go off and decide to brush their teeth twice a day? Was there some information in that presentation they didn't know, and has it increased their knowledge? And you can make it as big or as simple as a tick box or some writing. And you may want to look at, as Gay said, if you look at your caseload, have a look at a time flow and have a look and see whether over time things have changed.
Do you think it's fair to kind of simplify it? I'm thinking my own little simple head around that, you know, however you measured your gap in the first place, somehow you can do that to measure how has that gap closed after you've done your health promotion activities. So you might have, you know, how did you measure your gap? Think about how you measured your gap in the first place to know that it actually existed, and to do that after you've done your health promotion, as well as something else, like something qualitative, Marianne, as you were saying, so something that tells you how it was received. Is that fair to say that?
You could do that, all of the above. If you're looking at something like SUDI, obviously the figures are going to take a bit of time to come through if you're looking at the literature to support it, because we're a little bit behind in our literature with the analysis and on a national basis. But you can look at it considered around your population, that you may want some qualitative feedback. So that's your some oral, some written feedback. Has your knowledge changed around this topic? What will you do differently from now on? And will you use a wahakura or a pipi pod to sleep your baby in? Yes or no? Or why not? If not, why not? But yeah, the longer term analysis,
Yeah.
quant will take a bit longer to come out, and you can reflect that in your feedback. Yes, I can measure this currently around this activity where we've had some face-to-face, but the longer term feedback around deaths from SUDI may take longer to show up in the official literature in New Zealand.
Yeah, I had a question as you were talking there, Marianne, but it skipped my mind now. I know I was also thinking about last shoot, we talked about it's in your online activities when you have to talk when you're doing the PDSA cycle. So in a way, this is what you're kind of doing in this assignment. It's really about quality improvement. So if it's helpful to use the PDSA cycle to, to guide you through this assignment, why you're planning with the data, the doing, what are your actions, the studying is the evaluation, how did it go? That might be quite a helpful model for you to use as well. Yeah. Anything else about effectiveness? I wish my thought would come back, but it can't. Anyway, yeah. Effectiveness is so important, isn't it? Because, and I think over and over again when we've done this assignment or a similar topic is what we notice is that the link between the gap and the strategy are often not strong. So therefore the effectiveness becomes kind of waffly because you're not really clear about what you're improving or trying to improve and for whom. So to be really clear about that. Yeah.
One of the tricks, I guess, that I've used before is the what, when, why, and how kind of thing. So your what is the issue, and how do you want to improve the outcomes for people that have this issue, so to speak, and how to do that the simplest way, but the most effective way. And so what is effective? Effective means that you're taking into account the people that are receiving the health promotion, being in their place and thinking, if someone gave me this resource, this kind of resource, would I take any notice of it? Is, like if I'm a English second only language speaker, would I look at a pamphlet that's full of words and not many pictures? That, bringing it back to simple. Or would I be more likely to watch a video, or have I got internet? What resources do I have that would make the resource that you're giving me effective?
Yeah, great point. And that's what thank you, Gay. You prompted me to what my thought was. It escaped was around think about what your resources are for your activity. So there could be somebody in the community, there could be somebody in your team. So your activity might involve one of your kaiawhina or a health worker or somebody else. So you're going to be talking about that in both your activities and in your evaluation often as well. That your team, it's not just about you. So health promotion is very, very much about collaboration. So we would expect to see that kind of discussion in your evaluation as well and in your activities about collaboration. Yeah, any other thoughts on that, evaluating it before we move on to the last bit?
I just think do your literature research well around evaluation in the community and just what works in terms of project evaluation.
And there's a little bit there under the literature where to find it. So health promotion literature and evaluation literature is a good place to look. But also have a look under the nursing evaluation literature, particularly around your topic. And there's some of the DHB reporting in their annual reports. They report obviously on a range of there's 8 topics, but if you're looking at smoking, the DHB reports on that quarterly, so you could use that as part of your evaluation, thinking about where you might find the evidence. So in some, just going back to your effectiveness, you may need to use more than 1 or 2 or 3. You may need to use a range of different evaluations where you might find that information. So if you're looking at smoking, You can use the Wild Child Framework literature that comes out every 6 months. So it's 6 months, or in this case, currently it's a little bit further behind, but also take another text. So what does it say in the DHB for your DHB, and what does that look like for smoke-free? Because it might be slightly different. And then you may get some more immediate response if you have like a survey of your clients at the coalface. Tell me what you thought about this, and you can get some immediate feedback. But it's all in the, it should be all in the particularly in the health promotion evaluation literature.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I think,
literature.
sorry.
Oh, you go, Gay.
We're not practiced at over. Yeah,
Right.
thanks, Jess. And I think that later on, when you're doing your presentation, you may get some ideas from the team that you present to, because they'll give you some feedback on whether this evaluation worked or not.
That's right, and we'll get up to that in a minute. That's the last bit. But the literature that is written on the supplement is very helpful. And yeah, look, the Wild Child Quality Indicators, all that stuff is going to be useful for your, as Marianne said, for this part of the assignment. So in the conclusion, so you've gone through those assessment tasks, you've tried to meet the purpose of the assignment, and Katrina had some great words of wisdom for us when we were having our marking meeting discussing this assignment, which was the conclusion. You reflect back, did you meet the purpose of the assignment? And your conclusion is a place for you to summarise your main learnings from the assessment tasks. So it might be that you can summarise, just say about your population at risk and what you learned about your health promotion strategy or your health promotion activities that you learned from the doing of this assignment. So summarising your learnings from your assessment tasks. And again, there's no new literature. It's just about you reflecting on what you've done in the assignment. Did you meet the purpose? What are your learnings from the assessment tasks? We've given you a word count on the supplementary sheet, but it is only a complete guide. It's just a guide. Like if you want to completely do it differently, then you can, but this is just a guide to help you structure the assignment. Has anybody got a quick thought about what we would really maybe like to see in the assignment, or any pitfalls before we just move on to that last bit, which is about the presentation?
I think as a marker, I'm always interested in the introduction. So I think if you make that absolutely clear, what you're going to do, what you're going to focus on, and then reflect that back in your conclusion, that you haven't gone off track and talked about something else. So when you look at your conclusion, just make sure that you have stayed on track with what you said you were going to do, and that you're absolutely not introducing any new information, but you're summarising the main points. As Jess said, it's an opportunity to just kind of put the exclamation mark on your assignment and say, yes, this is it, I've done it, and it's perfect. Well, yeah.
Cool.
I think my only feedback would be that this is an opportunity to have some new thinking about a topic that's, if you think about the issue that you've identified in your previous assignment, have some, free rein to come up with something different that will help reduce particularly the gap in the health issue. But also you do need to find obviously the literature that supports your free thinking. So nice to go off on a tangent, but do remember that you need to support that with some evidence.
Well, guys, you took the words right out of my mouth.
You like meatloaf, do you?
Oh, do we sing now? Is that the prompt?
He was very successful. If only I could be so successful. Yeah, like this is practical. So ideally you can do your strategy, and we've had lots of times in the past when people have done their strategy. So this is a very doable, this is doable. This is applying theory, but it's to your practice. And mine will just be around, meet the assessment tasks and leave time at the end when you think you've finished it all. Go leave it for a day or two and just go back and do your editing and your proofreading, because that just, you go back with a clearer eye, and it's just much easier for you to look at your thoughts and see that's the wrong word. God, I've repeated that. You know, just to tidy it all up, because quite often we find that we know that people rush. We rush. I'm at the end of it as well. The last bit of the assignment is the presentation. So when you've done your assignment, I mean, that's the bulk of your presentation, but it is basically that you are just going to present this for, you know, a handful of colleagues, maybe at a team meeting. Some people do it by Zoom, some people do it face to face. If you have any trouble finding a little audience, then just send us an email, because we will often attend as well. But it doesn't have to be a whole lot of people. Your colleagues are great because they will be able to apply what you've learned as well, you know, so it's a learning thing for all of them. Yeah, you lead your discussion, and you'll find that your colleagues will always give you feedback, and they will maybe notice the gaps and strengths that you haven't noticed. There is a little feedback document. Where is it? It's on the template on Moodle, so I can't tell you exactly where, but it's on Moodle. So they will fill it in, and then you write a reflective summary about their feedback. Yeah, reflect on the feedback gathered, that's from the people who attended your session, regarding the potential effectiveness of your strategy. So like I say, they may identify some strengths and gaps. And then submit your summary, maximum 500 words, on Turnitin. And then we will just discuss it as whoever does your clinical conversation with you at the end of the paper. So it's just that little presentation, however you want it, to a group of your colleagues. They will feedback on the form on Moodle, and you will write your little reflective summary. And yeah, people like doing it. And your colleagues love the fact that you've taken the time to present to them as well. Have you guys got anything to add about that last bit, the presentation?
Just to ask for objective feedback. You know, it's exciting to be presenting to your team, your colleagues, or whomever, but just ask them to really be objective, because you want to think about the effectiveness of your strategy alongside the way that you've presented your information. So it's difficult sometimes to get and receive objective feedback, but it's how we learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I see Marianne's put down reflect down the bottom, process of making sense of an experience in order to learn and improve as a practitioner. So it's always a learning time for all of us and each other. The team that you present to may be overwhelmed with your, you know, amazing strategy, and you never know, may implement it.
Yeah.
Yep, probably the only thing I'd just in your summary do include how you've presented it to your group, and also the key is the effectiveness of this strategy is what you're looking at to reflect on as well in that reflection process. So if your colleagues say, well, actually you could have done this and you could have done that, which is great, as Gay said, gets a good feedback and what that might look for you. So you might say, oh, actually maybe in the future I might do this. Yeah, so just have a wee thought about how you could, what that looks like.
Yeah. Such good points. I know description is often, when we read them as markers, often you don't know how you presented because you weren't there. So again, like using something like the Rolf model of reflection, you know, the what, just do a little bit about what you did, 10 PowerPoint slides, or you had a post or whatever it is. So you can use a model like that. And yeah, ideally include some evidence. So we're going to want a couple of evidence links in there. You're probably going to have something around the Well Child Literature, the handbook. We can never get too much of that. Okay, well, I think we're done, guys. So good luck, everybody. We look forward to reading them, don't we?
For
We
sure.
absolutely do.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks,
Well, I'll
Jess.
sign us off, but we can just stay on the line for a minute, us little lot. And good luck, everybody.